Okay, guys are live. Good to go.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy August 20th. This is the meeting of the Climate Change Committee for Dewey Beach. And first order of business, I guess, is to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So let's take care of that. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, let's start doing a screen share and do our agenda. Oh, before I do that, let me do a quick roll call. See, we do have a quorum. We have Stacy, Deborah, Rich Soper, Drew, and myself as committee members. So I think we have a quorum. Okay, now let me share screen. Okay, here's our agenda for this morning. We've done our pledge and roll call. This is the agenda and we'll adopt this. Organizational tasks. We lost Phil as a member. He had other commitments outside of the committees that he's involved with in Dewey, so he politely excused himself. But I know he's got a lot on his plate. So as far as scheduling a next meeting, let's plan to talk about that a little bit later. And we have some follow-up business for report backs from Deborah and myself, Stacy and Drew, hopefully a little update from Marty, and the last one there on the Fish and Wildlife Grant. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about our initial report and our group discussion, which we generally have as a catch-all at the end. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda as written, please?
Motion to accept.
And second. Anybody in?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Okay, so we have the agenda adopted as written here. Next, I'll switch over to our minutes from the last meeting. Oh. Oh, good morning, Marty. How are you? All right. And so here are our meeting minutes from our June 11th session, and hope everyone's had a chance to read them over. The most important thing is the follow-up items, which I've recapped in our agenda today. So I think we should be all good. Anyone have any suggestions for modifications or additions to the meeting minutes from June 11th? If not, can I have a motion to accept the minutes as written?
Motion to accept.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Look at us moving right through this process quickly and efficiently. All right, that brings us to back to the agenda items here. All right, our follow-up reports. Deborah, can you give us a brief update on the discussion we had, please?
So good morning, everyone. Dave and I had tried to reach out to a number of people who were heading similar committees or had taken certain action of similar nature as we are approaching from neighboring towns. We were able to connect with Terry Tiemann, who is the Bethany town manager. We spoke with her via Zoom on July 26th. Her background was coming from Fenwick Island, and she's been in that position since January of this year. She's been working on behalf of with Bethany on tidal flooding. They have an issue with the canals down Route 1 and over the canals that flood when there's heavy storms. They did a study with the Army Corps of Engineer. At that point, it was determined that Bethany couldn't meet the criteria to work with them at that point because they needed more of a study to address what happens when the water exceeds the levels in the canal. So they did a two-dimensional study, and they recommended what was called a bladder dam, which is basically a steel dam that lifts in place when the water levels rise. One of the issues that they had to address was the different kinds of the mechanical parts because of the salt water and how that impairs that. She indicated that their water levels could go up 2.5 feet in the canal alone when the storms hit. And so they have been working with FEMA to get funding to have the dam that did get built. When they had the nor'easter, the streets there completely flooded and couldn't be passed. And that included people getting stuck in various locations. So that was one of the things they also wanted to address. They have this issue more, she indicated, on the ocean side than on the bay side, but it still exists on the bay side as well. They put money away for storm emergency relief fund, also for the debris and infrastructure that needs to be addressed because of what has happened with the flooding. And she also shared some documents with us, which, Dave, I don't know if you posted those or not, but she did share some information with us. She compared it to the Dewey Storm Relief Funds, which and she mentioned the Beach Replenishment Fund, but we noted that that fund is really used for beachside and not for bayside in Dewey. She said that they did a benefit cost analysis, hiring a company to do this study, and that they also are participants of the CSR program, something that we have discussed before. It was mentioned at the May 6th conference that a number of us had attended, and the talk of freeboarding. So they have increased their elevation levels for building about 2 feet, making it 32 feet high. FEMA has supported raising their houses, and the federal government is paying 75% to actually raise the building structures, which seemed like a very large sum and something that we were contemplating the importance of looking into on behalf of Dewey. They also have various committees in Bethany, and Fenwick has its own environmental committee, which she mentioned. She said that one of the things that the company they used, McCormick and Taylor, did is to focus on pervious surfaces and to make sure that there was a pervious surface ordinance. That the issue with that is that it does require ongoing maintenance. She indicated that there is a manual that was produced by the company and something that we may want to read and consider as to what its usefulness may be for us. That they have a tidal gauge monitor at the bridge on Route 1. It stopped working, and that caused a 6-month delay for them because of getting parts, etc. So at this point, they have a sea level rise study in Fenwick, which is on the website. Bethany feels like it's in pretty good shape at this point with their bladder dam, and that we are welcome to review the materials that they have used.
Thank you, Deborah. Very good and very thorough. Yeah, I think that Teresa is going to be an ongoing help to us, I think, at some level, because they've already done a lot. The big message, one of the big messages that I took with is that in all these cases, it takes a long time and lots of study and effort and money to prepare for applying for any of the grants that anyone is able to apply for. So I think this is going to take some time, but thank you for that recap. Okay, that's all for Bethany. We made an attempt to get a similar meeting scheduled with Christy Rogers from Milton, but we're unable to do so, and we'll see if we can follow up. I know that Milton has done a lot as well. On to potential funding sources. Stacy and Drew, can you give us an update on the research and background work you've been doing? Oh, you're on mute, Stacy.
Sorry, I have my animals in here, so I have to keep it on mute. So this is Stacy. I pulled together a document, an Excel document that outlines searches that I did on grants.gov. That search primarily fielded from requirements of a municipality, township, environment, or climate change, and did a search on that. And of course, in the United States. And I only came up with like 3 that looked like it's a possibility. And then I tried to go in to find DNREC information, but unfortunately their searching requires EIN IDs, subscriptions and whatnot. And I didn't have all the information for that. So I started looking at public record, and I pulled together a list of, I think, about 8 from DNREC that I also put on a different tab of the Excel document. And I chose Excel so that we could search it, because as you know, this is a document that will continue to grow. And in that document, some of those grants or partnerships is what they called it, were from the grants.gov grants. So that's why I kept them separate. But anyways, there are some opportunities that we can look into. And I think Ashley identified the video that you had sent out, Dave, earlier today or this week with that group, on trying to also find additional funding through them, not through them, but through partnerships that they have found. And I think in that video, they mentioned a PowerPoint presentation of the funding sources. I didn't know if anyone here had obtained that.
I'm gonna bring that up on the screen in just a moment.
Okay, great.
If you don't mind, let me take a segue, because I think that's an important thing for us to mention at this point in the conversation. Bill and I attended a meeting of the Rascal Group on Tuesday. Let me share the screen here with the Rascal Group website. Looking for a second. So yes, Rascal Resilience and Sustainable Communities League is a consortium of not-for-profits that have all banded together to try to put together help and guidance for communities about resiliency. And there were at least a half dozen different organizations that participated in the call, and perhaps more that weren't in the call. NREC, Center for Inland Bays, a representative from DelDOT, Delaware Estuaries, DEMA, Sea Grant, maybe 1 or 2 others that I didn't catch. And I think that this is really going to be a great help to us, because Rascal apparently has access to and has their tentacles in a lot of different places, not only for funding sources, but all kinds of planning and anything that we need in terms of guidance. The challenge, of course, will be to organize all of this into a meaningful and digestible way, but it is something that we will attempt to do. In support of that, Philip Kane from DEMA has already scheduled a session for Monday, and Stacy and Drew, and if I can attend, we'll attend that meeting to talk about DEMA opportunities. And Jim Pappas, who's from DelDOT, had mentioned that there's also a PowerPoint. I'll try to share that, and there's the right section here if I can get it, that he was able to share with us. All of this information we'll put up on the Dropbox repository. So here's a series of grants and programs that are available. It begins at slide 31 in this presentation, but you can review this, I guess it's 31 to 38, and this will be up on our repository later today. That's a great source, and there's lots of opportunities here. So Stacy and Drew, if you would, I'd like you folks to still continue to lead the effort to identify and help us document these sources and make sure that we get it all organized in a way that's most helpful for us to move forward. One particular group, it's called Sea Grant. I think Danielle Swallow attended from that group, and she seems to be a very good source for information and potential funding opportunities. And she'll attend the meeting on Monday with Philip Kane from DEMA as well in the group. And so we'll report back in our follow-up and probably get some meeting minutes posted as well on that front. The other reference was there's a workshop that will be scheduled probably this fall that Danielle will lead, Danielle from Sea Grant, or help us organize to bring together the community and talk about some of these issues. There is we'll probably have a meeting with DelDOT in September on resiliency issues. That's a to-do. And they also mentioned that there's a possibility of linking up with, the Association of Coastal Town Act, and perhaps getting some subset of the folks there involved in discussions about resiliency and sea level rise and such. That seemed like a good idea, and that was an action point to carry forward. So I think Rascal will be of great help to us if we can manage to, organize and keep the information in a digestible format. There's a lot there and a lot of help that they can provide us. Great organization. I think it's going to make our job a lot easier as long as we manage and organize it well. Any questions about Rascal or anything we've discussed?
May I just understand who has organized Rascal? Where is it getting its funding? What is the driving force behind it?
Let me share that window again. Here's the list of partner organizations, steering committee. Michelle Schmidt is the chair of the committee, and she's from Center for Inland Bays. As you can see, there's a lot of partners here among that. You can go, it's DERASCL.org is the website, DelawareRascal.org. And I don't know what their funding sources are, but I think there may be some additional information here, Deborah, that we can glean from this. But I think this is more than I ever could have hoped for in terms of resources that we can tap into and contacts and people who are knowledgeable about various funding and other opportunities for us. So I think it's going to be a wealth of information. And I think Michelle is very helpful in that regard. And that I think this is going to help us a lot as long as we can manage to keep it organized. Okay. Let me go back to with me. Lost my Sorry, I'll be there in a second. There we go, back to our climate change committee agenda. Okay, so that covers the potential funding sources. Thank you, Stacy, for that update and the good work that you and Drew have been doing in that area. If you have a latest version of that spreadsheet, if you want to pass it along, and I'll post it on the repository as well. Next, we have Marty was going to look into or give us a brief update on, since she's a member of the infrastructure committee, the work that they're doing relating to the stormwater master plan. Marty?
Hi, good morning. The infrastructure committee, of course, involves a lot of infrastructure projects in town, but the biggest one has been the stormwater master plan, which we, I guess that ORIS began in 2017, and we have worked with them and instituted a number of projects from the master plan. It's been piecemeal, but just about everything you see in town that is related to that has its source from the stormwater master plan. And Jim Tyler, who is our chairperson, has been valuable to that committee and to the stormwater master plan implementation because of his background as an engineer. He's been able to interact with the various groups and bring a different level of expertise than most lay people can. One of the things that we have not been able to do, as I say, it's been piecemeal, and we've not been able to implement all of it, or different parts have been successfully implemented and continue to be addressed. Reed Street being a good example of it continues to need support to be what we hoped it could be. And I guess the Bay is working against us in that respect. That kind of goes into the next item on the agenda, which is the Fish and Wildlife Grant. I reached out to Ashley to see if we couldn't find funding and a grant to help support what we wanted to do with the shoreline stabilization at the end of the McKinley Street Marsh. And we've not been able to do that because we put Michelle, who is from CIB, Michelle Schmidt, and the grant host together, and the project itself is not eligible for what the grant will do. So that, that kind of went nowhere at this point. So Ashley said she would continue to look for grant possibilities where that might be, that a project might be able to be funded. Part of our infrastructure committee's issues have been who even owns the marsh, and that continues to be a question. And I know that the Lions Club had asked state of Delaware, whether that was DENREC or who exactly, if they might take it upon themselves to do just like picking up trash and that sort of thing. And they were granted that permission, but who actually owns it, I'm not quite sure. It occurred to me that maybe the state of Delaware should just declare some kind of eminent domain in order to try to address the needs of the marsh. Gary, you've been on infrastructure committee, and so has Drew, and so has Phil at one point in time. I don't know what you could add to what I have stated here.
I really don't have anything much to add. I mean, I think Bill Zolper might have some updates on what the latest things are in terms of where we're going with grants and what the status of those things are. Bill, do you have some updates? You mentioned something yesterday at the meeting.
Yeah, so just to bring you up to date on the infrastructure, and I think you've heard this once already, Bayard Avenue is completely done with relining of pipes for the stormwater. Reed Avenue is completely done with relining pipes for stormwater. We still have to work on the outfalls. They're on Reed Street. Those are the flaps. During the summer months, I stopped all construction on the streets. That's not going to happen. We got too much going on in town. That work on Reed Street will be reevaluated with the flaps. We're getting estimates on how much it's going to cost to dig those up and redo those flaps, but that work will be done this winter. McKinley Street's been completely redone with realignment and replacing pipes on McKinley Street all the way down to the marsh that you're referring to. There is 3 spots on Route 1 that need to be finished for phase 1 of the infrastructure stormwater management to be completed. The marsh that's being talked about at the end of McKinley Street, DelDOT came back and told us that relatives of a Mrs. Hayden actually own that. And I passed that information on to Jim Dedes. He and Dawn are trying to get contact information for them because we really do want to do something at the end of that street. We're not really sure what the options would be at this time. As far as grants, we've got a couple different grants in the pipe. Some of them don't have anything to do with climate. One of them is for the lifeguard station to replace the deck. We should know about that in September. Another one is for Sunset Park. Ashley's done a great job on that. We've gotten through phase 1. We're in phase 2 on that grant. She's filled that out. So we've made the second cut or the first cut on that. And I think that was for approximately $25,000 to try to redo Sunset Park there at the end of Dagsworthy Street. And then, of course, there's a grant that we got for the town hall. There's still an outstanding federal grant for the town hall. But as of grants for the actual bay and the shoreline, working with Michelle Schmidt from Inland Bays and that Rascal meeting the other day, I agree with Dave. It was very helpful to be on that. DelDOT provided some additional information that may come up on tomorrow's 1:30 call. That DEMA may have some information on some grants, but a lot of them, as was briefed earlier, you have to have a study done before you can move forward. Now, there was a study done in 2012, way before I got here. There was the stormwater management study done in 2017. I'm not sure if those would meet the requirements for what we may hear tomorrow, but we'll find out. I hope that answers your questions, Gary.
Yep. Thank you, Bill.
And
Hey, Bill, it's Drew. And again, I apologize. Hopefully you can hear me. I couldn't hear anything for the first 15 minutes, but had some technical difficulties. Not sure what it was. But hey, Bill, it sounds like from our infrastructure meetings, sounds like you found out who owns that property, but for right now in the foreseeable future, the water's just going to continue just to dump there right at the beginning of the marsh near the street. Is that what's going to happen?
Yeah, we don't have permission to go in. I mean, there's a couple different options. The one I'm leaning to, whether it gets approved or not, would be to do one swale that goes all the way out to the bay that would let the water run out. There are pluses and minuses to that, but right now, Drew, we're not able to go into that. We do feel strongly that the Hayden family does still own it, and it's a matter of us just getting an address and phone number and speaking with them. And then after we speak with them, if we can get permission to do anything back there, of course, it's marshland, so it all has to go through DENREC.
Thank you.
thanks, Bill. Just point of fact, I think the meeting is Monday, not tomorrow. Hopefully Sunday we get a day off from.
No, it is tomorrow. I'm sorry, Dave. It's tomorrow at 1:30. Or I'm sorry, Monday at 1:30.
Okay, because there's an Eagles game on tomorrow at 1:30 that I need to watch. Okay, back to the agenda here. Point 2 is to discuss, information that we shared and talked a little bit about the table of contents in our last meeting. And what I think I'd like to do at this point, obviously at some point we want to put together a document that we can forward on to town council that represents the sum and substance of what we've done in this committee year. But with these new developments and the inputs that we will soon receive from Rascal and maybe some of the constituent organizations there, and the help and guidance that they can provide, I think I'd like to defer any further work at this moment on the report itself until we kind of sort all of this out. And what I would suggest we do in lieu of that is to schedule a meeting in October, and we'll talk about the date in a minute. And by that time, I think a couple of these meetings and follow-up discussions may have occurred with the various organizations, and we will have a clearer picture of what this whole picture might look like in terms of funding and the different places that we can look to for guidance and help. So what I'd like to do is postpone further discussion on the document until at least that. I think there's no particular pressing need for us to provide a report to town council by a certain time frame. I'd hope to do it by the conclusion of our committee year, which would be, I guess, in October, when the new committees are formed and there's discussed, outlined and stuff. So let's just hold off on that for the moment. And let's make this meeting a little shorter and say, let's just talk for a minute in open forum about any ideas and thoughts that you have based on things that you've heard so far, additional thoughts that you've had since the last meeting, and then we'll call it a day for today's meeting. Anybody want to weigh in? Let me go around the horn. Deborah, anything you'd like to add to the body of discussion so far?
So one of the things that had come to my mind, and I apologize, I did not look into it, but there used to be something called, through the Fish and Wildlife Service, Outstanding National Resource Waters. And as a result of the work that they did, they provided different kind of funding because their focus was more on, not on the water levels per se, but on maintaining the wildlife. And as a consequence of that, they did fund some of the flooding concerns way back when. So I don't know whether that's something that still exists that may be a different source, because the flooding would be deemed somewhat tangential to the actual focus of that, which is keep the waters pristine so that the wildlife flourishes. But flooding certainly is an adverse consequence to all of that.
How would we get more information? Do we have someone who could reach out and talk to the Fish and Wildlife group and get a little more information about that? Or Deborah?
I can look into seeing if they're still doing anything on outstanding national resource waters as a single entity. It's been a long time since I looked into that. But I can see if, it's the government returns to in-person 2 days a week starting September 15th, I believe. And that will change a lot of things. Right now, it's difficult to get any connections because you're not reaching any offices. Everything's being done pretty much by internet, and it makes it difficult to reach out to people. So I would hope that by the second week of September, there may be actual people in a building that can actually be reached.
If you can try to make that contact at the appropriate time, and if you receive any encouraging information or help that could be useful to us, if you could steer that maybe to Stacy and Drew, and they can add that to their potential for funding sources if that's okay. Stacy, anything for you?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, just like what Deborah was mentioning, if you guys stumble upon something and you don't even know if it's something that's relevant, if you just gather the information out of it and send it to Drew and I, and then we can add it into the document. And the way I see this document is it's kind of living and breathing in the sense that one grant might work for us this phase of where we're at, and then maybe even 3 to 5 years down the line, maybe something else that we've already documented may work on like a phase 2 of where we're at on this committee. So I think just documenting it and putting in there, I've made the Excel document easily able to search based on department funding, contacts and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, whatever it is that you have, I just say let's document it, because some of the stuff like what Ashley and Marty and Michelle were working on, the federal grant that we were talking about when we first came on as a committee, and Marty was explaining how we weren't a match for it. We still have it documented, right? So maybe we're not a match now, but maybe we might be a match on phase 2. So that's the way I see it. And feel free to send it to Drew and I, and we can update that document. And additionally, when we have our meeting on Monday, 1:30, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion out of that. So Out of that discussion, I'll update the document as well and send that back to you, Dave.
That'd be great. And thank you so much for taking the lead on keeping us, up to date with that information. I think that's going to be critical moving forward. Marty, anything from you?
I just want to applaud whoever was successful in determining that that Hayden family members or somebody actually owns the marsh. And, I would assume that they would be agreeable to wanting to, if they're not interested in selling their property, that they would be agreeable to someone trying to improve their property. But I applaud Bill or whoever, I guess it's you, Bill, who was able to determine that. I don't know if the Hayden family is concerned that they're responsible for doing it. And maybe that's why they've been, kind of out of touch with this, or maybe they're older and just, are not, aware of what is happening here in Dewey. I don't know where they reside right now.
Thanks, Marty. And Rich, last of the committee members before we go to others. Anything from you, Rich?
Yeah. I had watched the video on Rascal, and there was a question about their funding source. And the way I viewed what they were saying is that Rascal came about because of frustration on the parts of all of the groups involved, that they were duplicating efforts. And I think out of either meetings or some form of communication, they decided to try it. And for me personally, it felt like that was like winning the lottery, because you got the group together and because all of them are major funding sources, or they have worked on projects that we're talking about, because they jumped right to the front of the line when you started listening to what they were doing and where they wanted to go and how they wanted to do it. So I think they're going to be invaluable.
Yeah,
No doubt.
I agree.
We came away from the meeting, I felt like, in a real sense, we hit the lottery here in terms of the help and guidance that can be provided by that group. Otherwise, think of it, if they weren't together as a consortium, you'd have to try to contact each of them individually and sort it all out. Here, they're kind of used to working together, and they know what each area of focus and strength are. I think that's going to be great for us.
Just the idea that you had DENREC and DelDOT all on the same call, and they were both understood what the other one did and what they were capable of doing. And rather than having to fight to find a source for information, you're able to go to that group and they will be happy to directionalize it, which I think is just, it just makes life so much more simple.
Great. For any of you who haven't had a chance to watch it, it's an hour-long video recording of the meeting, but I think it will help a lot if you can find the time to do that. And that's part of the reason I feel that the document that we'll eventually put together and share with the council isn't so much the the issue at this point. It's really still getting our arms around what these sources are and what they can do to help us, and start to lay out a timeline of things that we ought to be thinking about in what sequence over a period, for both short term and long term. So I think this will be great for the committee. Anybody else? Gary, Bill, Ashley, anyone want to add something, please? Gary?
Yeah, just first of all, a question and then a comment. Deborah, when you were reporting on Bethany's activities, you mentioned the fact that they are getting the cost of elevating properties paid 75% by the federal government.
That is what she said, that what they had found through FEMA, of course, they had to qualify, but what they were able to do through FEMA, and I'm just looking at my notes, is that the federal government will pay 75%, provided that the town sponsors that the work gets done.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I know the Board of Adjustment just recently faced an issue where the cost of elevating the property was prohibitively expensive, and while the property was already above the FEMA level, it was below our freeboard level. And, so the Board of Adjustment had to make a decision there. But, if there's money available that can be gained in some way, a lot more properties can take advantage of this. And it's really a good strategy, I think, moving forward to encourage people to do that. So that was my question. I appreciate that. The other comment that I made was, first of all, you guys are doing a great job making all the right contacts. You've got, I think this Rascal group is certainly a good group, as everyone has said. I mentioned this at the town council meeting yesterday. What I forgot to do was to invite them all to watch the same video that I watched and that you guys have watched as well, because I think that it really gives you some good foundation. And the other suggestion I have is that, you've already talked about postponing the report. Dave, you may want to consider, at maybe one of the next two meetings, coming to or by Zoom, giving a report to the town council, letting them know what you're doing, so that I think all of the commissioners will have a better sense, and the public will have a better sense of what you guys are doing and the direction that you're taking. I think that could be helpful.
Absolutely. You do that. I think we're probably a little overdue of doing a proper report back. So I'll take that as an action point. Very good. Bill?
Yeah, so real quick to answer Marty's question, Marty, really Michelle Schmidt from Center of the Inland Bays and DelDOT were instrumental in finding out who owned that property. So if you bump into Michelle Schmidt, she's the one to really thank on that. Also to let you know that our dunes on the ocean side, I know we're talking about the bay side, the Corps of Engineers consider them meeting or exceeding the standards for a dune for protection of the beach. And they did a really good job during the 7-day storm, and hopefully we'll get the beach replenishment sometime this fall. But speaking with DENREC, they have not, and the Corps have not hired a contractor yet. You've got several different states and areas across the country that are looking at these different firms that do this beach replenishment, and everybody's got ARPA money and everybody's trying to hire them at one time. So they have not locked in a contractor yet, just to bring you up on that. And in the follow-up on Gary's question about the elevation and paying 75%, I'll give the town manager down in Bethany, Cliff Gravier, a call on Monday and talk to him a little bit about that and try to get more information from him and Terry on that program and see how we can apply it in Dewey.
Great. Thank you, Bill. And I'll make sure to put that in our meeting notes and carry that forward when we do get around to an overall document, because that does sound like a very important one. And Deborah, thanks for making sure that we capture that properly. Ashley, anything you'd like to add?
Sorry, I was getting it off mute. Nothing that I can think of. I think Bill covered everything with the grants between Bill and Marty, and I can just keep you posted as I find more grants, and then Bill set up that call with DEMA on Monday. So we can just touch base soon and keep you posted as more comes along.
That's great. Last order.
I'd like to say one quick thing if I could.
Yeah.
I just wanted to compliment Bill and his guys on the trash this summer. They've done a fantastic job of picking up a lot of trash this summer. It's a noticeable difference on the street, which in turn, it's not getting in the drains, which is another problem for flooding. And they've just been doing a fantastic job. If you're walking the streets, you definitely noticed it, but I just wanted to compliment Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. We were out this morning at 7:30 doing the trash runs, and I have one other guy doing trash runs today on the side street. So thank you. I'll let him know.
Oh, and finally, Dawn, would you like to add anything to the conversation? So you're on mute. Okay, maybe she stepped away. All right, final item here. Let's try to schedule our next meeting. How would Saturday, October 15th in the morning be for everyone? Does anyone have a conflict with October 15th?
Is there any chance of doing evening meetings or anything during the week?
Usually a little bit more challenging. We did do some meetings with other committees late afternoons on Fridays, right before happy hour, if that helps or would be an option.
So I can just tell you, I can never do anything on Fridays because I never know if I'm going to be in court the whole day. So
Drew, does Saturday the 15th pose a problem, conflict for you?
I'll be September 15th,
October.
October. I think October will be fine.
Okay. Anyone else?
That looks all right to me right now.
Okay. Why don't we tentatively schedule for 10 a.m. on October 15th? We'll still continue these. And by that time, I think we'll have a lot more of this information coming from Rascal and the constituent organizations together, and hopefully have a real good session and really put all this together into a meaningful context. With that said, any other comments before we adjourn? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.
Thank
Thank-
you.